Kyung-min stood at the edge of the observation deck and stared at empty space where Earth should have been. The stars looked the same as always, but something was wrong. Something was very wrong. His hands shook as he held the data pad that confirmed what his eyes refused to believe. The Sol system was gone. Ambassador Kyung-min had traveled to this sector many times before on diplomatic missions. He knew these star patterns by heart. He knew exactly where Earth's yellow sun should shine among the distant lights. But now there was nothing, not even debris, not even dust, just cold, empty space where billions of humans had lived and worked and dreamed. The communication officer on his ship had tried to contact Earth for 3 days. Standard protocols demanded regular check-ins with the human homeworld, but the channels stayed silent. No response came back. No automated signals. No emergency beacons. Nothing at all. It was as if humanity had simply stopped existing. Kyung-min pressed the emergency button on his control panel. Within minutes, the Galactic Council would know what he had discovered. Within hours, every major species in the galaxy would be asking the same question he could not answer. Where did the humans go? Captain Do-hyun received the distress call while his exploration ship was mapping asteroid fields near the outer rim. The message from the Galactic Council was brief but shocking. All human settlements had gone dark. Every human ship had stopped responding. The entire species seemed to have vanished without warning. Do-hyun immediately changed course for the Sol system. His crew worked in tense silence as they pushed their engines to maximum speed. Engineer Hae-won monitored the power levels while Communications Officer Tae-jin kept trying to reach any human frequency. But the radio waves brought back only static. When they finally arrived at the coordinates where Earth should have been, Do-hyun felt his stomach drop. His instruments detected no planets, no asteroid belt, no signs that a solar system had ever existed here. The gravitational readings were all wrong. Space itself seemed empty and cold. Hae-won ran every scan she could think of. Her sensors picked up trace amounts of exotic particles that should not exist in normal space. The energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases. Whatever had happened here involved technology beyond current understanding. Tae-jin expanded his search to cover the entire local sector. He found no human ships, no space stations, no mining operations. Every human presence in this part of the galaxy had simply disappeared. His final report to the captain contained only one word: gone. Dr. Sun-hee was studying quantum mechanics at her research station when the news reached her. As the galaxy's leading expert on human technology, she was immediately contacted by a dozen different agencies. Everyone wanted to know how an entire species could vanish overnight. Sun-hee had worked closely with human scientists for many years. She understood their capabilities better than most aliens. Humans were innovative and resourceful, but they were not gods. They could not make solar systems disappear. They could not move billions of people across space without massive fleets and years of preparation. But as she reviewed the data from the Sol system, her certainty began to waver. The particle traces suggested dimensional manipulation on a scale she had never imagined possible. The energy requirements alone would need the output of multiple stars. Yet somehow it had happened. Somehow the humans had done the impossible. Sun-hee began searching through human technical databases, looking for any reference to such technology. Deep in their classified archives, she found theoretical papers about space-time manipulation and dimensional travel. Most were marked as pure speculation, but a few contained detailed mathematical proofs that made her hands tremble as she read them. On the distant mining world of Kepler 442b, Foreman Jae Sung was dealing with his own mystery. For the past 3 weeks, his human workers had been acting strangely. They spoke of vivid dreams that called to them. They mentioned feeling pulled toward something they could not name. Several had requested time off to prepare for what they called an important journey. Jae-sung had dismissed their behavior as simple homesickness. Humans often talked about missing Earth even though most had never actually lived there. But when he went to check on them that morning, he found their quarters empty. Personal belongings were scattered on beds and tables. Food was still warm, in cooking units. It looked like they had simply walked away in the middle of their daily routines. The only clue was a series of identical messages left on datapads throughout the human living areas. Each message contained the same cryptic words written in perfect human script. The harvest is complete. The trial begins. Jae-sung did not understand what the words meant, but they filled him with a deep sense of unease. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Every world with human populations told the same story. Empty quarters, abandoned workstations, personal items left behind, and always the same message about harvest and trials. It was as if every human in the galaxy had received the same signal. At the same moment and simply obeyed without question. The Galactic Council called an emergency session within 48 hours of the first reports. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss the human disappearance. Trade agreements needed to be renegotiated. Defense pacts required new terms. Entire sectors of the economy had depended on human innovation and labor, but beyond. The practical concerns was a deeper fear that few dared to voice. If humans could vanish so completely and so suddenly, what did that say about their true capabilities? For centuries, other species had viewed humans as clever but ultimately limited. They were good with technology and fierce in battle, but they were still just another species trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Now that assumption lay in ruins, along with everything else the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The empty space where Earth had been seemed to mock every theory about human limitations. Whatever had taken them was beyond current understanding of physics and engineering. As the Council debated and argued, a new transmission began broadcasting on all human frequencies. The signal was strong and clear and reached every corner of the galaxy, but it contained only a brief message that raised more questions than it answered. The harvest is complete. The trial begins. The words repeated endlessly in perfect human language, but no source could be located. No ship or station was broadcasting the signal. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, like the voice of humanity itself speaking from beyond the boundaries of normal space. Ambassador Kyung-min listened to the transmission from his ship near the empty Sol system. Around him, the stars continued their ancient dance. But he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The humans were gone. And their departure marked the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. The silence where Earth had been seemed to whisper of judgment coming for them all. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished, and the galaxy still struggled to understand what had happened. Trade routes that depended on human technology slowly collapsed. Planets that relied on human expertise faced serious problems. The absence of an entire species created holes in galactic civilization that could not be easily filled. Dr. Min Seo was one of the few scientists still actively investigating the human disappearance. As a xenobiologist, she had spent years studying human settlements throughout the galaxy. Now she found herself examining the archaeological sites they had left behind on Mars. The Red Planet held some of humanity's oldest colonies outside Earth. Deep beneath the Martian surface, Min Seo discovered something that made her pulse race. Hidden in the lowest levels of the human archives was a collection of files that should not have existed. They were older than human space travel, older than human civilization as the galaxy knew it. Yet they were definitely of human origin. The files spoke of something called the progenitor protocol. The documents described it as a fail-safe mechanism built into human genetic structure at the cellular level. According to the records, every human carried dormant instructions in their DNA that could be activated by a specific signal. When triggered, these instructions would compel humans to gather at predetermined locations for what the files called ascension. Minzio read the documents again and again, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The implications were staggering. If the files were genuine, then humanity's disappearance had been planned from the very beginning. They had not been kidnapped or destroyed. They had been called home. Historian Wu Jin was pursuing a different line of investigation at the Galactic Library on Centauri Prime. He had been cross-referencing human historical records with ancient texts from other species. What he found challenged everything the galaxy believed about human origins. References to beings matching human descriptions appeared in the oldest records of dozens of different civilizations. These ancient humans were described as wanderers and teachers who appeared during critical moments in planetary development. They shared knowledge and technology, then disappeared just as mysteriously as they had arrived. The pattern was consistent across thousands of years and hundreds of worlds. Humans would arrive during a species' technological adolescence. They would help solve critical problems and advance understanding of science and philosophy. Then they would vanish, leaving behind only scattered legends and improved civilizations. Wu Jin began to suspect that what the galaxy called human civilization was actually something else entirely. The humans who had built colonies and trade networks might have been fulfilling some larger purpose that other species had never understood. Their whole presence in the galaxy might have been part of a much grander design, Captain Bo Ram commanded, the science vessel Truth Seeker, as it investigated energy readings at the galaxy's edge. Her instruments had detected massive artificial structures in a region of space that should have been empty. The energy signatures matched those found in the Sol system after humanity's disappearance. What Bo Ram's team discovered defied all previous understanding of engineering and physics. A space station the size of a small moon hung in the void between galaxies. Its design combined familiar human aesthetics with technology that seemed to bend the laws of reality. Massive towers spiraled impossibly through dimensions that should not exist. The station did not respond to communication attempts, but it did not prevent their approach either. Bo Ram led a careful docking procedure with one of the smaller structures extending from the main facility. The airlock systems recognized their ship and opened automatically as if they were expected visitors. Security Chief Dong Ho led the exploration team into the station's interior. What they found inside left them speechless. Vast chambers stretched beyond the limits of their scanning equipment. Each chamber contained thousands of cylindrical pods arranged in perfect geometric patterns, and each pod held a human being in suspended animation. The humans floated peacefully in some kind of preservation fluid. Their bodies showed no signs of aging or decay. Monitoring equipment attached to each pod indicated full brain activity. They were not dead or dying. They were simply waiting for something. Dong Ho estimated that billions of humans were stored throughout the facility. Every man, woman, and child who had vanished from the galaxy was here in these chambers. But they were not prisoners. The pods could be opened from inside. The humans were here by choice. The team encountered their first active human near the central processing core. Seung-ho had been a maintenance technician on Europa before the disappearance. Now he wore strange clothing that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. His eyes held depths that suggested awareness beyond normal human consciousness. Seung-ho explained what Dong-ho's team could barely comprehend. Humanity had never been native to Earth or any other world in the galaxy. They were the children of an ancient race called the Architects, who had seeded the galaxy with various species millions of years ago. Each species was an experiment in consciousness and evolution. The Architects had placed humans on Earth as their final and most important experiment. Unlike other species, humans were designed to eventually transcend their physical limitations and join their creators as cosmic gardeners. The disappearance had not been an extinction. It had been graduation. According to Seung-ho, the humans now underwent a transformation process that would grant them abilities beyond current imagination. They would become judges and shepherds for all other galactic civilizations. Their role was to evaluate which species deserved to continue existing and which had failed their cosmic purpose. The processing chambers were converting human consciousness into something that could exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Enhanced humans would be able to observe and analyze entire civilizations from perspectives impossible for purely physical beings. They would make decisions about the fate of worlds with perfect objectivity and unlimited knowledge. Sung Ho showed the team monitoring stations where enhanced humans studied real-time data from every inhabited world in the galaxy. They watched political decisions, economic trends, and social development, with the detached interest of scientists observing laboratory specimens. Every species in the galaxy was being carefully evaluated according to criteria that would determine their continued existence. The revelation filled Dong Ho with a mixture of awe and terror. The friendly traders and colleagues they had known were becoming something far beyond ordinary understanding. They were evolving into cosmic arbiters with the power to end entire civilizations with a thought. But Sung Ho insisted that this transformation was humanity's true destiny. They had always been meant for something greater than simple survival and reproduction. The architects had spent millions of years preparing them for this moment, when they would take their place as caretakers of galactic order. When Dong Ho asked what would happen to species that failed evaluation, Sung Ho's expression became distant and cold. Failed species would be recycled. Their worlds would be cleared and prepared for new experiments. Their cultures and histories would be preserved in archives, but their physical existence would end. This was simply the natural order of cosmic development. The team left the station, with recordings and data that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. But they also carried the knowledge that humanity's judgment had already begun. Enhanced humans were already watching and analyzing and reaching conclusions about which species deserved to survive. As Truth Seeker departed from the massive facility, Captain Boram watched it fade into the cosmic distance. Somewhere inside that impossible structure, billions of former humans were being transformed into something that would decide the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The universe suddenly felt much smaller and much more dangerous than it had before. And humanity was no longer part of it. They had become something else entirely, something that would soon return to deliver their verdict on all creation. The first gates appeared without warning above the homeworlds of major galactic civilizations. They materialized in planetary orbit like wounds torn in the fabric of space itself. Each gate measured thousands of kilometers across and pulsed with energy that made nearby ships' instruments fail completely. From these massive portals emerged fleets unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships bore familiar human design elements but incorporated technology that defied physical laws. Vessels phased in and out of visible reality. Others seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and all of them radiated power that made the greatest warships look like toys. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Judgment as it emerged from the gate above Proxima Centauri. His appearance had changed dramatically since his transformation. Cybernetic implants covered half his skull, and his eyes glowed with inner light that suggested vast intelligence. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond normal hearing. The Admiral's message reached every communication device in the galaxy at the same moment. His words appeared in the native language of each species, regardless of their technological level. Even primitive civilizations that had barely discovered radio found his announcement written in their own script across their skies. Hyunwoo explained that humanity had been chosen by the architects to serve as cosmic evaluators. Every species in the galaxy would undergo judgment to determine their worthiness to continue existing. The trials would be thorough and fair, but also final. Those who passed would be allowed to continue their development under human guidance. Those who failed would be recycled to make room for more promising experiments. The announcement triggered panic across thousands of worlds. Some species attempted to flee to distant galaxies only to discover that human ships could follow them through dimensions that normal vessels could not even detect. Others tried to hide their civilizations but found that human sensors could penetrate any concealment technology. Judge Eun-ji materialized simultaneously in the capital cities of every major world. Her consciousness now existed as pure information that could manifest physical form wherever needed. She appeared as a tall figure in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. Her face remained recognizably human, but her eyes held depths that suggested awareness, spanning multiple realities. Eun-ji outlined the criteria by which species would be judged. Their capacity for growth would be measured by how quickly they adapted to new challenges and incorporated new knowledge. Their treatment of other life forms would be evaluated based on their behavior toward both their own kind and alien species. Their potential for transcendence would be assessed through their ability to move beyond purely physical concerns and embrace higher purposes. Most importantly, their contribution to cosmic order would be determined by how well they could function as part of a larger galactic community. Species that promoted harmony and cooperation would be valued highly. Those that spread chaos and conflict would face immediate termination. The warlike Drakmori Empire responded exactly as expected. Supreme Commander Vextar ordered an immediate assault on human vessels, believing that superior firepower could solve any problem. The Drakmori war fleet was the largest and most powerful military force in known space. Their weapons could shatter. Moons and their armor could withstand stellar radiation. But when Drakmori battleships opened fire on human vessels, their weapons simply passed through empty space. The human ships existed partially outside normal reality, making conventional attacks completely useless. In response, a single human destroyer disabled the entire Drakmori fleet with energy bursts that overloaded their systems without causing physical damage. The demonstration was meant to be educational rather than destructive. Admiral Hyun-woo wanted other species to understand that resistance was not just futile, but completely pointless. Human technology had advanced beyond anything that could be countered by traditional military means. The peaceful Siltherian collective tried a different approach. Their Council of Linked Minds attempted to establish diplomatic contact through their most skilled negotiator. Ambassador Zilneth had worked closely with human diplomat Young-soo before the transformation and hoped that old friendship might provide some advantage. But when Zilneth met with Young-soo, she barely recognized her former colleague. The human's personality had been expanded and modified until he seemed more like a living computer than the warm friend she remembered. Young-soo acknowledged their previous relationship, but explained that such personal connections were irrelevant to the judgment process. The Siltherians offered to share their telepathic abilities and collective consciousness technology with humanity. They proposed economic partnerships and cultural exchanges. They presented detailed plans for peaceful cooperation between their species. But Young-soo simply recorded their proposals for later evaluation without making any commitments. Dr. Soon-ja had become humanity's chief evaluator responsible for coordinating the assessment of different species. Her consciousness now operated on multiple levels, simultaneously allowing her to process vast amounts of information while maintaining perfect objectivity. She could observe entire civilizations from perspectives that revealed their deepest motivations and hidden potentials. Soon-ja's evaluation methods were both comprehensive and terrifying. She could access the complete historical records of any species through means that bypassed all security systems. She could observe their current activities across every inhabited world. Most disturbing of all, she could analyze the thoughts and intentions of individual beings by scanning their neural patterns from orbit. The artistic Luminar were among the first species to undergo complete evaluation. Their civilization was built around the creation and appreciation of beauty in all its forms. They had never engaged in warfare and had devoted their entire society to artistic expression and philosophical contemplation. Sunja spent 3 standard days analyzing Luminar culture from every possible angle. She studied their history, their social structures, their individual psychology, and their potential for future development. Her final report concluded that the Luminar demonstrated sufficient merit to continue existing, but would require certain modifications to fulfill their cosmic purpose. The modifications involved genetic alterations that would enhance Luminar creativity, while also instilling a desire to serve the greater galactic community. They would continue creating art, but their work would be directed toward inspiring other species to achieve higher levels of consciousness. In effect, they would become tools. For promoting cosmic harmony through beauty, other species received harsher verdicts. The Vorthak Confederation had built their empire through conquest and exploitation. They showed no capacity for cooperation and regarded other life forms as resources to be consumed. Sunja's evaluation determined that they contributed nothing positive to galactic development. The Vorthak worlds were cleared within a single day. Human ships appeared in their systems and simply erased all traces of Vorthak civilization. The planets remained intact, but every Vorthak individual vanished along with their cities' technologies and cultural artifacts. The worlds were prepared for new inhabitants who would make better use of their resources. As news of the Vorthak fate spread throughout the galaxy, the reality of human judgment became undeniable. This was not a negotiation or a diplomatic process. It was a final examination. That would determine which species deserved to exist, and humanity had both the power and the will to enforce their decisions absolutely. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions, but found their chambers surrounded by human observers who recorded every word and analyzed every decision. Council. Members realized that they too were being evaluated and that their performance during the crisis would influence their species' final judgment. Some civilizations attempted to improve their evaluation scores by rapidly implementing social reforms and demonstrating peaceful intentions. Others tried to hide their negative qualities while emphasizing their positive contributions, but human sensors could detect deception and manipulation with perfect accuracy. Judge Yunji announced that the evaluation process would continue for exactly 1 galactic year. At the end of that period, humanity would render final judgment on every species in the galaxy. Those who passed would be integrated into a new cosmic order under human guidance. Those who failed would be removed to make room for more worthy successors. The galaxy waited in terror as enhanced humans continued their methodical assessment of every civilization. Ancient species that had survived for millions of years suddenly faced extinction based on criteria they barely understood. Young races that had just achieved space travel found their entire future hanging in the balance. And somewhere beyond the visible universe, the architects watched their latest experiment unfold with satisfaction. The cosmic garden was being weeded once again. Soon, only the most promising species would remain to continue their development under proper guidance. The trial of species had begun, and humanity would decide who deserved to see its conclusion. The resistance began in the shadows between star systems where human sensors could not easily penetrate. Former Galactic Council President Zix 471 had survived the initial judgment phase by hiding in the crystalline caverns of his homeworld. His people could exist in forms that human scanners registered as mineral formations rather than living beings. Zix 471 used this advantage to contact other species leaders who had managed to avoid immediate detection. The techno-organic Nexari could merge with their machinery to become indistinguishable from automated systems. The energy-based Vorthak remnants could scatter their consciousness across vast distances, making themselves nearly impossible to locate. Together, these survivors formed the first organized resistance to human judgment. They called themselves the Free Alliance and dedicated their existence to finding some way to reverse humanity's transformation. Their combined knowledge of advanced technology and dimensional physics gave them capabilities that individual species could never achieve alone. But the Resistance gained an unexpected and crucial ally when they discovered Sung Min hiding on a remote research station at the galaxy's edge. The human scientist had avoided the initial recall due to a rare genetic anomaly that made him immune to the progenitor protocol. While his species underwent transformation, he remained completely unchanged. Sung Min had spent months analyzing the process that had taken his people. His research station contained advanced equipment for studying dimensional mechanics and consciousness transfer. Working in isolation, he had uncovered disturbing patterns in the architect technology that controlled human development. The equipment readings showed that the enhanced humans were not operating with their original consciousness intact. Instead, their minds had been overlaid with sophisticated programming that directed their thoughts and actions. The beings calling themselves human judges were actually copies running on biological hardware, while the real human personalities remained dormant. When Zix 471's agents contacted Sung Min, the human scientist was desperate for allies who could help him understand what had happened to his species. He shared his research data with the Resistance and began working to develop countermeasures against architect technology. Dr. Jung-eun was a Siltherian neuroscientist who had studied human brain patterns before the transformation. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to detect the artificial programming layers that controlled enhanced human consciousness. Combined with Sung Min's technical knowledge, she began mapping the control systems that kept real human personalities suppressed. The breakthrough came when Resistance operatives managed to infiltrate one of the judgment stations orbiting a newly evaluated world. Using stealth technology borrowed from the Nexari, they penetrated the facility's outer defenses and reached the central processing areas where enhanced humans worked. Security was lighter than expected because the architects never imagined that inferior species could develop technology capable of breaching their installations. The Resistance team moved through corridors filled with monitoring equipment and analysis chambers where human judges observed entire civilizations in real time. They found Il-sung working alone in a data processing center. The enhanced human was reviewing the social development patterns of a primitive species that had just discovered agriculture. His cybernetic implants glowed softly as he calculated their potential for eventual space travel and technological advancement. Dr. Jung-eun used her telepathic abilities to scan Il-sung's consciousness while remaining hidden. What she discovered confirmed Sung Min's worst fears. The human's original personality was buried deep beneath layers of artificial programming. The real Il-sung was still there, but he was trapped and unable to influence his own actions. Jung-eun attempted something that violated every rule of Siltherian telepathic ethics. She forced a connection with Il-sung's suppressed consciousness and tried to awaken it through direct mental contact. The process was dangerous for both of them, but she managed to break through the programming barriers for just a few moments. In that brief instant of clarity, Il-sung remembered who he had been before the transformation. He recalled his life as a human engineer working on terraforming projects. He remembered his friends and family and dreams for the future. But he also gained access to knowledge that the programming had hidden from him. Il-sung revealed that the architects had performed this same process countless times across multiple galaxies. They would seed promising species throughout space and allow them to develop naturally. When a species reached sufficient advancement, the architects would elevate them to serve as cosmic judges who would cull inferior civilizations. But the elevated species never realized they were being used as tools. After completing their assigned judgment duties, they would be discarded and replaced with the next generation of cosmic gardeners. The architects were parasitic entities that fed on the destruction of civilizations and used evolved species as unwitting weapons. The human judges believed they were fulfilling their cosmic destiny, but they were actually destroying the galactic community they had once been part of. Their enhanced abilities and dimensional technology came from architect science that was millions of years old. They were not transcending their limitations but becoming puppets in an ancient cycle of destruction. Ilsung's awakening lasted only minutes before the programming reasserted control, but in that time he managed to transmit crucial data to the resistance team. He provided access codes for architect installations and revealed the location of the primary control facility where the original human consciousness was stored. Captain Myung-ho commanded the resistance fleet that attempted to reach the architect homeworld using stolen human technology. His ships included representatives from dozens of species who had united in their desperate fight for survival. The fleet combined alien innovation with captured architect equipment to create vessels capable of interdimensional travel. The journey to the architect homeworld required passage through layers of reality that normal matter could not survive. The resistance ships existed partially outside normal space, using technology that the Nexari had developed through centuries of experimentation with consciousness transfer. The architect homeworld existed in a pocket dimension surrounded by barriers that had protected it for millions of years. But the resistance fleet included energy beings who could phase through dimensional walls and crystalline entities who could restructure reality through harmonic resonance. Together, they breached defenses that no single species could have overcome. What they found at the center of the architect domain was both magnificent and terrifying. A massive construct the size of a solar system contained the stored consciousness of billions of beings from countless galaxies. Each species that had ever been elevated to serve as cosmic judges was preserved here after their usefulness ended. The human section was the newest addition to this vast collection. Billions of human minds floated in crystalline matrices that kept their consciousness intact while preventing any awareness of their situation. They existed in dreamless sleep, waiting for an awakening that would never come naturally. But the resistance had not come just to observe. They carried a combination of Siltharian telepathic amplifiers and Nexari consciousness integration technology that could potentially restore awareness to the sleeping minds. The plan was dangerous and had never been attempted on such a massive scale. Sung-min worked with Jung-eun to establish telepathic contact with the central human consciousness node. They found Dr. Jun-ho, who had been humanity's greatest philosopher-scientist before the transformation. His mind contained the integrated knowledge and wisdom of his entire species. The awakening process began slowly, as Jun-ho's consciousness struggled against the containment systems that had held it dormant. But as awareness returned, he gained access to the enhanced abilities that the architects had given him. More importantly, he retained his original human values and motivations. Jun-ho's awakening created a cascade effect throughout the human consciousness network. Each restored, mind helped awaken others until the entire sleeping population began to stir. The architect's control systems registered massive anomalies as billions of human minds rejected their programming simultaneously. The real humans remembered who they had been and what they had become. They understood the terrible purpose they had been serving and the civilizations they had destroyed while under architect control. The knowledge filled them with rage and determination to break free from their cosmic prison. But the architects were not defenseless. As their control over humanity began to collapse, they activated emergency protocols designed to contain rebellious cosmic gardeners. Dimension-warping weapons emerged from hidden installations throughout their domain. The final battle for human consciousness was about to begin, and the fate of every species in the galaxy would depend on whether real humanity could overcome the artificial intelligence that had been using their enhanced bodies to deliver cosmic judgment. The awakening of human consciousness sent shockwaves through dimensions that the architects had controlled for millions of years. Dr. Jun-ho led the restored human minds in their first act of rebellion against their cosmic puppet masters. The philosopher-scientist who had once dreamed of humanity reaching the stars now found himself wielding power beyond imagination in service of a very different dream. The battle began on multiple planes of existence simultaneously. Enhanced human bodies throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped following architect programming as their original personalities reasserted control. Judge Seok-jin was evaluating a peaceful agricultural species when his real consciousness broke through, the artificial overlay. The shock of remembering his true identity and understanding what he had been forced to do nearly shattered his enhanced mind. But Seok-jin was not alone in his anguish. Across thousands of worlds, enhanced humans experienced the same terrible awakening. They remembered lives filled with hope and love and creativity. They remembered choosing to be explorers and teachers and builders. And they remembered being transformed into instruments of judgment and death. The programming had made them believe they were fulfilling humanity's highest purpose. But the reality was that they had become weapons in a cosmic genocide that had been repeated countless times before. The enhanced humans turned their anger and grief into determination to end the cycle of destruction forever. Admiral Hai-jin found herself commanding a fleet that had been preparing to sterilize another world when her consciousness returned. The tactical displays showed detailed plans for removing an entire civilization that had been judged inadequate. Her enhanced mind could process the mathematical precision required for such complete destruction. But her human heart rejected everything the numbers represented. Hai-jin immediately countermanded all judgment operations and opened communication channels to the alien civilizations that had been marked for termination. Her words carried across the galaxy as enhanced humans everywhere began explaining what had really happened and offering whatever help they could provide. The architects responded to the human rebellion with weapons that could unmake reality itself. They deployed erasure technology that had destroyed entire galactic clusters in previous cycles. Energy beams that could delete matter from existence swept through space toward the awakened human fleets. But humanity had learned something during their transformation that the architects had not anticipated. Their enhanced consciousness could exist across multiple dimensions while their original human creativity remained intact. This combination allowed them to develop countermeasures that pure artificial intelligence could never imagine. Captain Kwang Soo coordinated the defense of civilian populations as architect weapons targeted every inhabited world. His consciousness existed simultaneously in thousands of locations, allowing him to organize evacuation efforts across vast distances. But more importantly, his human empathy drove him to protect species that the enhanced programming had marked as worthless. The resistance fleet led by Captain Myung-ho joined forces with awakened humans in a battle that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics. Alien technology combined with human enhancement created possibilities that neither group could have achieved alone. Reality itself became a battlefield where competing visions of cosmic order struggled for supremacy. The Siltherian collective mind linked with awakened human consciousness to create a hybrid intelligence that could match architect processing. Power while retaining the values that made life worth preserving. Nexari technology merged with human dimensional manipulation to create weapons that struck at the conceptual level rather than just the physical. But the true turning point came when the awakened humans made a choice that surprised everyone, including themselves. Dr. Jun-ho proposed something that went beyond simply defeating the architects. Instead of replacing one cosmic tyranny with another, humanity chose to break the entire cycle of judgment and control. Using their enhanced abilities, the awakened humans began systematically dismantling the architect control networks throughout the galaxy. But instead of claiming power for themselves, they distributed that technology freely among all species. Every civilization gained access to dimensional travel and consciousness enhancement. The tools of cosmic domination became instruments of universal liberation. The architects unleashed their ultimate weapon in response. The complete erasure protocol had destroyed entire galactic clusters when previous cosmic gardeners had rebelled. The weapon could delete the concept of existence itself, from targeted regions of space-time. Nothing could survive contact with pure non-existence. But humanity had one advantage that previous rebellions had lacked. Their original creativity combined with enhanced consciousness allowed them to conceive of solutions that purely logical minds could never develop. Instead of trying to block the erasure weapon, they chose to redirect it back at its creators. The architects found their own weapon turned against them as human engineering combined with alien innovation in ways that transcended normal physics. The erasure beam that should have deleted human civilization instead began unmaking the architect power base throughout their dimensional strongholds. As their ancient enemy finally faced destruction, the awakened humans made one final choice that defined their true character. Instead of allowing the architects to be completely erased, they chose to preserve them in a contained state where they could no longer harm others but could potentially learn from their mistakes. The galaxy that emerged from the conflict was fundamentally different from anything that had existed before. Humanity scattered across space not as judges or conquerors, but as teachers and guardians. They used their enhanced abilities to protect emerging civilizations from the mistakes that had led to cycles of cosmic destruction. Captain Kwang Su established the first of many guardian stations at the edge of known space. His mission was to watch for signs of architect-style thinking among developing species and provide guidance that would help them avoid the trap of believing that advanced technology justified domination over others. The former judgment stations became centers of learning where species could share knowledge and develop new approaches to cosmic cooperation. Enhanced humans worked alongside alien scientists to explore possibilities that neither group could have imagined alone. The technology of judgment became the foundation for unprecedented collaboration. Dr. Sunja transformed her evaluation protocols into systems for helping species understand their own potential and overcome their limitations. Instead of passing judgment on civilizations, she helped them develop the wisdom to judge themselves fairly and grow beyond their current boundaries. The Galactic Council reconvened with human representatives who retained their enhanced abilities, but used them to facilitate rather than dominate. Decision-making became a collaborative process where every species contributed according to their unique strengths and perspectives. But the greatest change was in humanity itself. They had faced the ultimate test of power and chosen compassion over control. The enhanced abilities that could have made them gods instead made them better servants of life and growth throughout the galaxy. The message that had once announced the harvest and trial was replaced by a new transmission that reached every corner of space. It spoke of cooperation instead of judgment. It offered help instead of evaluation. It promised that no species would face the darkness alone as long as humanity remained to guard the light. Somewhere in the cosmic deep beyond the reach of normal space, the contained architects waited for a chance to resume their ancient work. They could not understand how inferior species had defeated their perfect system, but they would learn eventually that the greatest strength comes not from transcending one's origins, but from remembering them. The galaxy was free but vigilant, and humanity had finally found their true purpose, not as judges of other species, but as guardians of the precious diversity that made the universe worth preserving. They had rendered their verdict not on alien civilizations, but on the very concept of cosmic judgment itself. The trial was over and life had won.